Greetings, this is Jim Phillips. This is a preface to the video I made for Frank a couple days ago. So today is February 9th, 2026. My name is James N. Phillips Jr. I am a friend of Frank Detman. Frank and I have been friends since the mid-60s. That means 1960. And he was born in 57. I was born in 56. We met while we lived on Transu and became friends. And I don't remember how that occurred. Maybe Frank came by and was selling something like Grit, the newspaper, or Amway, as was the tradition, it seemed, of the Detman household at that time. Frank was very, very energetic and seemed to make friends easily. And I took to his friendship rather quickly. We became, I think, pretty strong friends over the years, and a dearest friend as we moved forward. Let me talk a little bit about the things I didn't say in the video. Specifically, I'd like to point out, Frank was quite the athlete. He was much more gifted than I was. He was not only an athlete, but he was also a talented um, uh, artist and was talented in much other ways for the work that he has done. So I find that to be extremely exciting to know that he had gifts that I didn't, and I wish I could have shared more in that. He was also, as mentioned in the video, or at least the amended video that I just put out, is that he was quite the darter. That meaning he threw darts, and he was recognized for his talent, for throwing darts and being competitive. So I'm excited to know that he took that and had some fun with it, which is nice. I mean, if you go on YouTube, you can find a number of his matches that he had. Frank went by the Darth Hack, or the Dart Hack, Darthack, the Dart Hack, or Darth Hack. I guess we'll see how that works out. But yeah, he's on there multiple times, and I've captured a couple of those videos. For the amended video I did for him earlier this week. The we were phenomenally close. We camped together. We played backyard sports together. We threw baseballs, footballs, basketballs, hockey pucks, whatever was there to play. We didn't play hockey or to soccer. We just, I guess if that was a thing, we would have done it, but it wasn't a thing. We did. We played baseball where baseball wasn't possible. It seemed we had two guys. Him and I would play baseball in the backyard, and develop rules, and make it work, and had fun. I mean, I think that was really the fun thing about Frank, is that wherever he and I were together, we had fun. We laughed and did things. We made a game out of stuff, and which kind of is amazing as you look at kids, here in 2026. That how is it that you need all this stuff to have fun, when Frank and I would run outside, play in the road, and just have a boatload of fun. And it wasn't just Frank and I, it was our neighbors would do the same thing, because that was how neighbors and neighborhoods, coalesced, is having kids play out in the, oftentimes out in the dirt road that separated all the houses. It was the thing that we did. It was rather fun. I remember, I think it was a stupid things. I mean, because if you're 14 to whatever, what you do is you do stupid things because those are the things that just entertain you the most. And while we never did anything, horrible or thievery or any bad stuff, what we did do is just sort of like, oh, that's kind of cool. I remember going out. It was one scouting event with him, and around the pond were reeds, and these are just what's called reed, R-E-E-D, reeds, and we broke them off, put them in the fire, and pretend like we were smoking. Now I'm sure that that's not good for you, so kids don't do that. But it was a thing that we did because that's what other people smoked. We didn't, but that was what we did because we saw that. Um, we also uh, we'd walk. We'd play. I showed the video this what's called the Catholic. Well, the Catholic was actually the Blessed Sacrament Catholic Church, which was just behind my house, and that's the primary playground for a lot of things we did. We played football out there, we played basketball out there, we played baseball out there, we played kickball out there, we played hockey out there. We played everything. Uh, Frank broke my glasses out there. There was even out there. Frank and I did a movie. It was called Kung Fu, and it would star Frank and me and my brother Phil and my brother um, Mark, and it was just stupid. I have yet to put that on VHS. VHS, God, that's horrible. On DVD. Um, I'll have to get that changed over, but that was when you look at things that people did. That's what we did, and we loved doing it. We rode bicycles where we had an opportunity to ride bicycles. We'd walk to school, which is about 2.5, 3 miles, I would suspect. I don't know, I never measured it. Um, but we just did that. And so when we played football together, Frank was a much better talented person, but his talent wasn't enough to be able to get him to become a starter. I wasn't a starter because I wasn't a talented, but I was a senior, so they had to put me on there because I think there's a pity requirement for uh, seniors in high school who want to play football, and they have to put them in there because that'd just be awfully bad form not to. So I was put in, which I was grateful for. Um, so that's just kind of how things were. We we did a lot of stuff. Didn't start playing golf together until a little bit later. Probably until after he and I both graduated high school, and he was in the Air Force, and so was I. We played a little bit of golf together. That was kind of fun to do because we've never done that. We bowled together. Um, the darts, we probably played darts together, but later on he became good, and I became just the way I always am, just there. So we never did. I never did well at that, but I always admired the fact that he excelled at that craft. But he also excelled at a lot of sports. And the competition that you would have against your best friend is always the sweetest competition because that's the one you want to beat. And regrettably, I uh, I seldom had an opportunity to actually win at that, but I was pleased to actually participate. So that was some good stuff. So that's really when you look at a relationship between two guys in from let's say 8 years old to 18 years old. This is our formative time, and I'd really like to leave this with Frank's family as well as my family. Is that this is as you see us today, remember us back 65 years ago when we were your age and when we had fun doing stuff and when we were participating in just little silly things that we did. And those little silly things that I think about today were probably really extremely important back in those days. And I think it's important to remember as family is that hey, dad or grandpa or great grandpa, you know, whatever title that you might be carrying, for Frank or myself, that you remember that we were young once as well, like you. So I think one of the things that Frank has said, and I'll leave you with that at the end of the video. So listen for it, because that is really the message that we want you to walk away with. Is and effectively it's play well, play well. God bless. Take care. Until we have an opportunity to meet again. May God's face be smiling upon you, on Frank, on on the Phillips family, on the Detman family, and for all those who knew us. God bless. Greetings. This is Jim Phillips. I want to say hello to my friend Frank Detman. Now, I'm making this video for both Frank and I, but more importantly, I'm making it for our families. Frank's family and my family. Because while you see us in 2026, it was a whole lot different, 50, 60, 70 years ago. And I want to share some of the early years that Frank and I shared. You see, Frank was my best friend when I was growing up. In fact, I would probably say he's still my best friend. And while we have not stayed together for a number of years, the formative years that we had when I was younger, and so was he, were extremely important in my development, and I dare I say his development. Frank and I, he was born in '57. I was born in '56. So there was about a 6 month overlap, if you will, when he was the same age that I was. So he took pleasure in that. Since we were almost the same age, but for timing, probably would have been in the same grade. Now, I'll go into some of the early years later, but suffice to say, we were close. When I joined the Air Force, it was a year later that Frank joined the Air Force. I went into the career field of medical x-ray. Frank went into the career field of medical x-ray. I was stationed RAF Bentwaters in England. Frank was stationed at RAF Alconbury in England. So our paths really paralleled along a great line. By that time, we were in our late teens, early 20s. And somewhere, after his time in the service and my time in the service, we just kind of separated. We always stayed connected in our hearts, but we didn't stay, physically connected. So let me share some of the connections. As I said, we grew up on Transu. He was just down the street from my house, and we had some great times there playing different types of games on the road. Because kids back then, we did what we could do based on what we had. So we played catch with footballs, baseballs, played basketball. There's an incident where Frank uh, passed the ball to me and hit me in the face and broke my glasses. Thank you, Frank. That was good. And later, we would play hockey out at what's called the Catholic, which was the Blessed Sacrament's backyard. And he slap shotted me and it hit me in the forehead. Thank you, Frank, for that. There are times where he and I were just messing around. Like that wasn't messing around, mind you. That we went to the Miracle Twin Drive-In. Now I was a little bit chunkier, and Frank was a little more thin. So I got stuck underneath uh, a wall as we're trying to climb in through the wall there at Miracle Twin Drive-In. Uh, Great laughter ensued. The reality was is that we both escaped unscathed, other than the great laughter we had for his chunky friend getting stuck. Now, granted, I wasn't really heavy. I couldn't fit in like Frank was. Now, Frank was, you know, we'd go into his house, and Frank was a bit of a prankster, particularly to me. But that's part of his charm. Again, we're still, less than probably certainly under 16 years old. I remember going down to his house, and and the house just adjacent to his had a nice hedgerow. Now, Frank knew I was skittish, and there was a time where I was startled by Frank. I chased him down. He turned around and flipped me over. I mean, just totally flipped me over. Quite the surprise there. And of course, later on we laughed. I don't think I laughed at that time because I was still ticked off. But it was hard to get upset with Frank because Frank was lovable and he was my friend. Frank and I were involved with Boy Scouts. We we never made Eagle Scout, but we had a great time camping and doing things with the Scouts. We would play this really odd game called Skittle Bowl. Well, Skittle Bowl is there's a picture of it, a picture of it's kind of like tetherball and bowling at the same time, and you have to swing this little thing to knock over these pins. There's 10 pins, and that would make a horrible sound. And particularly since my dad worked during the day, and I set the Skittle Bowl up across from where he was sleeping, every time it made this giant swoosh, just sound, uh, Dad would get up and just chastise us both for doing this. I look back and think about how much fun that was to do it, but also, yeah, I'm sure it was pretty irritating to Dad because I probably wouldn't like it myself. But it was a hoot back then. There were times when during high school, I went to the same grade school at Bar Height, and then went to Bentley High School. Well, Bentley, you know, Frank was always much more athletic than I was. He was just naturally athletic. He could play basketball, baseball, certainly football. He was just athletic. Later on, tremendous able to play darts. Now you say, well, how athletic is darts? As well, darts require a lot of attention to detail, and Frank was able to master that.
I play this on Guitar Hero. It's on Guitar Hero. My son has it. I love it. It's fun.
And become a notable champion in that. But I digress. Frank was, we play football. Now, I generally wasn't good enough to be a starter, but I was good enough to sit on the bench. Frank was able to be a kicker, and show a picture of him and I in our uniforms. I was his number 78, and he was number 55. There in the top row, there in the picture. But we just had fun being part of a team and then being brothers as part of that. One of the other things we did, and this was really at Frank's behest, is that we played hockey back behind the my house, and into the area where they had a whole bunch of dirt mounds. It's gone now, but we would find little places to play hockey. Now later on, Frank was to be serve as a statistician for the Bentley Senior High hockey team. Now he invited me along, and I participated with him, and it was fun to go over to the IMA and sit in the booth and score hockey for the team. Um, we never played that in that degree, but we did have lots of fun because we participated in another thing together. You know, in reflection, when you think about being a kid, and life is so much more instant at that while you're a kid, we never thought about the future. We just thought about then. We just thought about the friendship we had and the partnerships we continued. Later on, as we separated, those memories still stick with me about the beauty of childhood and having a good friend while you're growing up. Frank is a good friend, and Frank has, he needs to know from me, and I want my family to know, and I want his family to know how much of a great person Frank had been in our relationship as young people. Because a 70-year-old Jim Phillips and a 69-year-old Frank Detman, it's hard to envision us as kids. And this video, I wanted you to at least take the time and envision us years earlier, so that that you know my dad or my grandpa was a kid and he had a friend. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, everyone, for listening. God bless you. In closing, I want to share with you some words that Frank has used quite often when competing in darts. And I believe it actually will help us as we proceed in the future. Take a listen.
Play well.